and you're going to feel like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, and the only choice you have is to step off in God's hands.
I will let you preach on hell when you stop being glad that some people are going there.
Somebody comes up to me verbatim. I couldn't worship today because you changed the font.
Manipulated, that's a fun word.
If you want to prove to yourself that God exists, then be obedient.
The congregation is not your therapist.
I don't think we're desperate for heaven. We sing about it,
Right.
we talk about it, but most folks are perfectly fine waking up and staying here tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Chris McNeil, and this is Ministry on the Move, a podcast interviewing pastors and ministers across the USA. As the father of the McNeils, I get to travel across the country singing the gospel, and one day it occurred to me that you all need to know each other. You are a part of the extended McNeil family and the body of Christ. Join me on a journey to churches of all shapes and sizes, different parts of the country, and see just what it takes to shepherd the body of Christ. For more information on the McNeils, you can visit us at mcneilmusic.tv or mcneilmusic.com. Thanks for joining us, and here's the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ministry on the Move. Today, the McNeils find themselves close to our own house, about 40 minutes away, and we're at Shady Grove Baptist Church, which is just outside of Greenville, Texas. This is Stephen McAbee's second time on the podcast. The first time he was here, he told the story of how he baptized the wrong person. I think I named an entire episode after it because it was that good. This time he's back, and he just spent 4 days down in Kerrville, Texas, helping a community rebuild after one of the worst floods that South Texas has seen in decades. On July 4th of 2025, 137 people lost their lives. Most of them were kids from camps along the river, and you probably saw stories of it on the news. But here's what stuck with Steve. For every tragedy that made the news, there was a testimony that didn't. A couple trapped in their attic when the water was rising, praying, and then a window that had never opened before suddenly opens. Another couple floating 2 miles down the river on a couch and getting rescued. These are the stories you don't hear on the evening news. I am Chris McNeil. Follow us on Facebook and share it with someone in the ministry. Here's part one of my interview with Stephen McAbee. Hey everyone, this is Chris, Ministry on the Move. Today the McNeils are close to home. This has been a fun year for us because we've done a lot of stuff that's relatively close to the house, and so we get to spend the weeks at home, and that's been a nice thing, but it has been 2 weeks since we've been on the road, and so it's good to be back on the road. That's what I'm trying to get at. But today we're not far from the house. I think it was a 40-minute drive. We are in the sleepy town just outside of Greenville, Texas, at Shady Grove Baptist Church. Pastor Stephen McAbee. And Stephen, this is your second foray into Ministry on the Move.
Clearly, yes, it is. Thank you, Chris.
Didn't learn your lesson the first time.
That's right.
So you have been here 4 years now. Is that accurate?
3.
Three.
I'm just finishing the 3rd year.
Okay, so the honeymoon's over.
Honeymoon's over.
And have you baptized the wrong person again?
Not yet. Not yet. I hadn't found that wrong one yet. That's funny. I remember that.
Yeah, I do too. In fact, I think I named the episode after it because it so caught my attention. But you did just spend some time away. Was it a mission trip? Where did you go last month or this month?
Excuse me. Yes, we went to Kerrville. So, July 4th of 25 last year, we all woke up to the news of floods in South Texas, South Central Texas, and the hill country was being bombarded by gallons and gallons of water. And 137 people lost their lives, most of them children from camps that were staying at camps along the river. And my family followed that story, oddly enough, all day long. And, we were stopping along the way and praying for people. And I don't know, somewhere along the lines of October, November of last year, I got an email saying, hey, Southern Baptist Response Team is going to try to coordinate teams to go in and help recover. Mm-hmm. I guess our Southern Baptist Convention had been there almost from day one, and they were doing initial responses, and then it's transitioned to long-term recovery. There's a church down there that we were able to stay with, and mm-hmm. they actually received the girls the day that it all happened, and they had counselors and things there, and then from there they've had team after team after team since July 4th. So they haven't had an empty building since July 4th of last year.
Oh, wow.
And what stuck out to me, Chris, a lot, just in terms of the church, was I got there, and the pastor, when he found out that there was another pastor there, he came up to me and he said, hey, I'm pastor of the church, and I just want you to know that this church is your church this week. Whatever you need, we're here for you. We're going to leave the building unlocked. There's no restrictions. Go where you want to go, do what you want to do. Just ask you to leave the room like you found it.
Right.
And man, I mean, the attitude was stellar, spectacular. You would think after 10 months of people being in your building, you'd be tired of hosting something. Yeah. But no, I didn't get that vibe at all. Man, they were very close-knit and wonderful people to work with and work for, and just be an extension of their heart and their ministry into their community. And then just getting out in the field and just hearing stories and the gut-wrenching stories of things that took place. And right. I think for every tragedy that you hear on the news and life that was lost, there was, multiple people that were saved in miraculous ways. One couple told me that they were stuck in their attic and they didn't know how they were going to get out. The water was rising, and they were just praying, and all of a sudden a window that they didn't think would open all of a sudden opened up while they were praying. No one touched it. Window just opened up, and they waded and swam over to the window, got up on the roof, and they were able to be rescued because they were able to be seen. Wow. But they were able to escape because a window miraculously opened, and they were just praying about it. And so you hear stories like that, and you don't hear that on the news.
No,
and you don't hear on the news a couple not having anything other than a couch, and they floated on their couch 2 miles down the river before they were saved. Wow. You don't hear those stories. You hear the tragedies, and probably for good reason. But at the same time, God was working that day and saving lives, even while lives were perishing. And that was kind of my takeaway. It's just there was tragedy, but there was also testimony in the midst of it all.
Right. It's interesting. Here in 3 weeks, I think. We won't be talking about it on this episode, but here in a few weeks, I interviewed Scott Jones, who's the pastor of First Baptist Church, Rockport, Texas. And he was ground zero for Hurricane Harvey back in, 2019, I think, 2018.
2017.
Oh my gosh, has it been that long?
Mm-hmm. It was the year my son was born.
Wow.
And I know that because the hurricane hit Houston, but it also came through Louisiana.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right.
It turned and went through Louisiana, and the
one.
eye of the storm came through my town in Louisiana.
Okay.
And my wife was 9 months pregnant.
Wow.
And she went into labor, and we were isolated, and we had to be rescued out of the floodwater.
Oh, wow.
We were up on a hill, and between us was a valley, and the water was too high. So this guy with a big truck drove over there and got us and drove us back, and then took us to the hospital.
No way.
Yeah. So it's 2017.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, yeah, it's amazing that you would know that, right? Yeah. That's crazy. So Scott Jones is the pastor of First Baptist Church in Rockport, where it landed. As you said, it hit Rockport, then it went out into the ocean, then came back and hit Houston, then went out in the ocean, and then came back and hit Louisiana, New Orleans area, right?
Lake Charles, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. And so Scott was that pastor that you were sort of describing. He had Governor Abbott there. He had Franklin Graham from Samaritan's Purse. Is that right?
Samaritan's Purse, yeah.
And then at the time, Vice President Pence from the first Trump administration. They were there in a show of solidarity. Is really the fact of the matter. So these tragedies happen. And yet, and I'm curious. So let's go down the C.S. Lewis path for a second. There's a problem of pain, right? We live in this fallen world, and bad things happen, and the rain falls on the just and the unjust. And how do you make sense of that as a pastor who? So then, for you, has been on a lot of these different sides, right? You've been on the side where you were the one that was supported and you got to the hospital on account of a Good Samaritan. And then you're going down into churches trying to minister to people who've maybe lost everything, certainly important things. How do you make sense of that?
From a human perspective, looking at a creator? Is that what you're asking?
Oh, okay. We could start there. Yeah. I also want to get to the point. Yeah. Let's start there.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about doing it as a pastor.
Okay. So there's this common struggle in our walk of faith.
Mm-hmm.
How can God allow evil in the world?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then there's that whole discussion to have and have had, and it certainly is a struggle to work through. I think of the biblical example of Job. Mm-hmm. Job had, it was stated many times in chapter 1, Job was doing what was right, and he was righteous. He was considered a just man. And yet his name came up in conversation between the enemy and the Lord. And it was the Lord who brought Job's name up,
Right.
Because the Bible says that the enemy had been out doing his bidding, looking to and fro, going here, going there. And I think maybe it's Peter. He was going out looking to see whom he may devour. I think is the way Peter says it.
Yeah, right.
And so he was out doing his evil bidding, and he comes back, and God says, "Hey, if you consider my servant Job, so God was the one bringing Job up because Job was doing the right thing, and so good things happen to bad things happen to good people. How do you make sense of that? And obviously, the only way we can is to understand that we're sinful, and sin has entered the world, and sin has caused tragedy to be among us, and something that we have to struggle with. That's the short answer. How do you handle it as a pastor? I think you love people in the moment. I think you be present with them, and you sit and you talk and you encourage and you pray and kind of work them through their emotions, and alongside your emotions, and be real and be raw, be real.
So maybe you should make a distinction. I think I know what you would say. Because there's a little bit of a dichotomy here, right? You just got finished saying that Job really didn't do anything wrong. God pushed him to the center of the table and said, "Hey, Hasatan, let's make a bet. Mm-hmm. He won't curse me." Mm-hmm. I mean, that was really right. Job had not sinned per se. And yet this nature of evil we ascribe to the presence of sin in the world. And so there's one thing, it's one thing for me to say, I'm being very hypothetical here. I did something stupid. What's the phrase? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, right? So, for instance, it was a drug deal gone bad. Well, maybe you shouldn't do illegal things, but yes, that was a sin, and 3 people died. I'm making this up. It's just a hypothetical. But it's another thing to say, here's this brand new mom and dad, and they need to. The flood is keeping them from giving birth. That to say, well, but that's sin too. Do you understand the difference? That
I would say to that issue, yes. There's no one would assume or say that Job was sinless, right?
Yep.
I mean, that was the only person that got that designation was Christ,
Right. Yeah.
right? And so there's a difference to say that Job hadn't sinned, or that he was righteous in the sense that he was not doing anything wrong to deserve the judgment. At the end of the book, Job had become so proud, he had made all these assertions and all these things, and
God had to set him in his place.
God had to set him in his place. Where were you when Where were you when I? So just saying that Job was righteous doesn't mean that Job hadn't sinned.
Mm-hmm.
It means that he was his heart was after God, and his desires were after the Lord.
Yep.
And his three friends come along and says, "You must have done something wrong to deserve this." When not necessarily. But at the same time, there's evil in the world because of sin.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe, Chris, that had Adam and Eve and us as a human race, if we had not made those decisions to allow sin in the world wouldn't have the evil that we see today.
Yep.
You're
right.
And so there's a lot to kind of have a conversation about there, I guess. But I think the short of it is there is tragedy and there is struggles in our life and in our world because we live in a fallen world, and we have on some level we have to on some level deal with that struggle, and no one is immune to that. And I would say this to people: just because we're going through a difficulty or a tragedy, it doesn't mean that God doesn't love us, and it doesn't mean that God's not on his throne, and it doesn't mean that God's not in that moment with us.
Yeah. Yeah, I would. Yeah, that's what I would have anticipated you would have said. I would say it very, 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 very similarly. That the world in which we live was fallen before you and I got here, and it will be fallen long after we got here. We leave.
Correct.
And we have no one but our great grandfather Adam to blame. Although we would have done the same thing had we been in his shoes. And it has sort of occurred to me. So my mother passed away. It will be 3 years in August, and she passed away from complications of Parkinson's. And I've never been so relieved. That's a weird thing to say, to watch someone that you love and say, well, thank God that's over with. But as a believer, as someone who follows Christ and believes that this is round one, that sin produced Parkinson's, and Mom, because she lived on planet Earth, got Parkinson's for whatever reason. But by God's mercy, he allowed us to die, which seems kind of weird. But it's only through that death, the first death, that she's now perfect. Mm-hmm. And will continue to be. I don't know if that's a mature version of that or not. I do know that seems like a lot to stomach for somebody who just lost their daughter from a camp.
Right.
They sent, and is dealing with survivor's guilt. Mm-hmm. Why did I send them to that camp? Surely we're going to find them. Yeah. Did you come into contact with any of the people who had lost loved ones?
I
along the
personally
way?
did not.
Yeah.
The home that I was working with, primarily, both husband and wife were able to get out. They were awakened because a car slammed into their side of their home.
Oh my conscience.
And it was floating. It was floating, rushing down the river. Floating, the car was, and it hit their car, hit their home, and it jarred the house and woke them up. And the husband hit the floor, and he was waist deep in water.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that's how they were
Notified?
awakened and notified. Yeah. And they scrambled and got out and went to high ground, pulled their son out of the house next to them, pulled their neighbor out, and they all went to high ground.
Oh my conscience.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was primarily the home that I helped. When we rebuilt the porch and some fence for them.
Yeah.
And out by the road, and then some privacy fence around their home. So that was primarily where I was tasked to.
Yeah. I'm curious, were they believers before?
I'm not sure that the couple that I worked with that were believers today.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they were. I tried to have some gospel conversations, and the wife ended up walking off, and the husband stayed semi-engaged.
Wow.
So I'm not sure where they were in their faith journey. And the director of it all told us some of the homes that you're in, they're not believers.
Right.
Sure. And so the prerequisite for us working with them wasn't that they had to sign up for Christ.
Right.
You
No.
didn't have to be a believer to have the help.
Exactly.
And so I really feel like I was probably at a home that probably wasn't a believer.
And I mean, and truthfully, it doesn't seem like a stretch to think that people would be maybe the wounds are still a little bit raw to have those discussions.
We were
in
there
some cases.
We were there 4 days, and it wasn't until the end of day 3 that they began to open up and talk to us at all about it.
Really, because it was just so. Was it overwhelming to them?
Yeah, it was. You could just tell the emotions, just like, and they had just had a pretty massive rain and tornado warning even in the area, and so
Flashbacks, reliving it.
They were reliving it. Yep, for sure. The word the wife said it triggered me all over again.
Yeah, that's yeah. Okay, so I realize that may be difficult to take in 3 days and fix. Right? You're not there. Let's say it this way. I'm going to spit it. I'm going to tell you what I think about this, and then you're going to tell me where I get it wrong. It would be my thought process that going down there, like you kind of said, you're not going down there to change the world. You're going down there to show an act of grace and of love, and in the name of Jesus, right? You're giving someone a cup of water and saying God loves you,
Right.
and so you may not see the results on this side of heaven. You may never know. Okay, so with that sort of as the backdrop, let's make it more personal to those of us that walk around in a department store, grocery store, or have a tragedy in our own town that you know about. What is it that those people needed? Had you been able to make them your neighbor or stay there, live there? How would you have approached it maybe differently if, given the fact that you had, 3 years or 5 years to get to know them and just, because I got this feeling, this is how I sort of, if I put myself in their shoes, I'm thinking they're going, okay, what is it that you want? Oh, here's the Jesus card. You want me to sign on the dotted line. That's exactly what they're after. And so they would be reticent to accept the help because they're just not ready to process that or whatever. So I guess, first of all, is that accurate? And second of all, what would you do differently if you had 3, 5, 10 years as their next door neighbor? How would that change?
Yeah, so I think it probably is accurate in terms of they were probably very guarded in the sense that they didn't want a lot of pressure to feel like they had to concave or to concur to what we were there representing. Yep. Obviously, I didn't put any pressure on them, and I told my team, look, we're just here. If they open up, they open up. If they don't, they don't. We're keep in mind we're an extension of this church.
Yeah.
Yes, we're an extension of Shady Grove, but we're an extension of this church, and we're on their turf. We're in their town, and we're not going to mess up their ministry persona or perception in this community. We want to make sure that we're doing what we can and need to do to keep the doors open to everyone that we talk to. So unless they would have just like blossomed and opened up, I wasn't going in guns a-blazing,
Right?
Because you just never know when someone's ready or not ready, and I only had 3.5-4 days with them anyway, so it's not like I could have done a whole lot. But the people in the grocery store that you see day in and day out in town and your neighborhood or your home, your workplace, your school place, I mean, building relationships and being authentic, and letting them see you in real life situations, and then in their real life situations, being present, I think goes a long way in terms of relational evangelism. And then it's that whole, I have to say, my words have to match my witness. And when you're in a relationship with someone that you see every day, that's what separates a gospel presentation, is that when you're pressed, what comes out of you. And because the world around you, they're going to see that,
Right?
And so when you're in a hurry, how do you react? When you were having a stressful day, how do you respond? When
you lose your child, when
correct,
when the rains come and your house gets carried away,
correct,
yeah.
Those real life situations happen to all of us. So how we respond in the moment in the Lord and with our faith and through our faith and letting that faith drive us and guide us, that says a lot about who we are to people who are watching.
Yeah.
Peter would say in 1 Peter, you live your life among the pagans in such a way that they see your good deeds.
Glorify
And
your
because
Father.
they see your good deeds, then they in turn want to glorify God because you're glorifying God.
Yeah.
And so I think it's that kind of a model that we have to make sure that we're in that mindset.
So this season in Ministry on the Move, I started a Facebook page, and I have it's very modest. There's not a lot of people. There's more people that listen to the podcast than are connected on the Facebook page as of yet. That changes every day, but I've only had it out for like a month, 6 weeks, something like that. But I've noticed that there are people from outside the continental United States that are listening to the podcast and following it now on Facebook. And it makes me very conscientious of the version of Western Christianity that we're throwing out. It terrifies me, to be truthful, because I think that we have become so complacent in our affluence that we don't understand what it means to participate in the sufferings of Christ. We get mad at God, right, when our house burns down or the rains come. And yet for people in other parts of the world, they're not just losing their family or their livelihood or whatever because of a natural occurrence. They're losing it because of their faith, right? And we're just not there yet. What would the message be maybe to the church in America? How do we sort of right that ship? How do we get out of our complacency? I find this particularly problematic from my own personal experience. I'm very comfortable where I am. I love my house. I love my family. We've got a decent place. It's not a mansion by any stretch of the imagination, but there are people in other parts of the world that would just kill for it. I mean that metaphorically. How do we straighten this out? How do we straighten Chris out? And
I don't know. How do you straighten Stephen out? I don't know. I don't know. That's yeah. I don't know. I'm real tempted to bring something up, but I don't think we need to talk about it on the air. But let me kind of give you maybe a parable.
And we can always hit stop if you want to try it.
Okay.
We can make that decision and then go one
Right.
either. But I'll leave that entirely up to you.
Okay.
Start with the parable. Yeah.
So I have in my mind just a family that is well known, professes Christ. The culture sees that family, but then the ship sinks, so to speak, and people have a lot of things to say, and it's real easy to be on both sides, Christianity-wise, and then non-Christianity, and then just point fingers because we don't know what's going on the inside. But I would say, as a Christian community, it's vitally important that we really seek the heart of authenticity, because I think an unauthentic individual, meaning someone who's not open with their struggles or their deficiencies, we got it all together. I'm supposed to be in Christ, and there's this persona that we have it all together.
Right.
That can do more harm than good, Chris, in the world in which we live. And that can destroy a witness faster than anything because no one has it together.
Right. Yeah.
We're all broken, and we are all deficient. And when we begin to act like we have it all together or we're not deficient, and then when those things show up, we leave the world going, yeah, that's what Christianity's like. Forget that.
Right. Yes. Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. We get our Americanized version of it where we think somehow that I'm entitled to something. And I think people look at you sideways and go, wow, you really need to go touch grass. Because you're not seeing it the right way. Can you talk a little bit about maybe I'm always about balance. So if you say something, I go, well, this, and then the other side of it. I was part of an organization where we do men's retreats, and over the men's retreat, a lot of guys would wind up giving their testimony, and one of the things that we were really insistent on is that you not dwell on the salaciousness of the sin.
100%.
Like, we don't need. Okay, you said you had an affair, buddy. Not you, Stephen, but some hypothetical guy.
Right.
You said you had an affair. I don't need any more detail than that aspect of it. How do you in this authentic life? How do you balance, particularly in a church where you might have, oh, you know what? I did it again. I really struggle. I mean, it's a struggle, right? For some people, some things are a struggle, and I'm not picking on people in your church. This is all hypothetical. This goes everywhere in Christianity. You're right. 100%. We're all a hot mess. So I'm saying this as much for people listening. There's no behind the scenes details that I have that I'm privy to in your situation. But how do you balance the thought of, we're all hot messes, but let's not dwell on, let me tell you how my week went. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it's there's a healthy balance in not oversharing,
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think what you're describing is someone who just comes in and like is a fire hydrant at the mouth and doesn't
Yeah.
know when to shut it off.
Yeah,
you know,
you just said in 2 words what it took me about 3 minutes of the podcast to say. Oversharing. Yes, that's what I meant. Thank you.
So
Continue.
I think there's danger and there's detriment too in that kind of mentality, but at the same time, I think Casting Crowns has a song where we stained glass masquerade.
Yep.
You know, we're just all
Another one.
parading around
Yep.
like everything's okay and
Yep.
I've got it all together. But in reality, if I were to really tell Chris who Stephen is, would you still love me? Mm-hmm. And that's a real question.
It is a real question.
That's a real question.
Yep.
You know, but at the same time, if I were to, Stephen's thinking, if I open up to Chris about who I am, not only is he still going to love me, but is he going to keep it to himself?
Oh, right. Yeah, even worse.
Because that's the other I think that may be part of the reason people are so silent and try to keep it all together. Because one, we're not going to be loved if you hear who I really am, and B, you're going to go spread it around like gossip, and then where am I going to be after that?
I heard an interview recently from an ex-witch, and she said that gossip was a form, in her opinion, gossip was a form of witchcraft
Wow.
because you are casting an image of someone else that does not belong to them.
Wow. That's tough.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And you know what? I think in America, maybe it's more than America. This is where I live, and I've never been outside of it. But for my money, I guess I should say, it seems to me like there's a lot of sermons that we leave on the bone for things like that, for things that don't need to occur in our churches, like praying each other in the back. Right, we're really, hey, let me tell you, you need to pray about them. Here, let me tell you all the salacious details. Right, I thought that was fascinating that it was that she felt it a form of witchcraft because she was really casting an image of somebody that did not exist in reality.
Wow.
And she was, and if you say it long enough, it's going to become reality. Yeah.
But I think your original question was how do you fix the mindset, or what would you tell to America? And I think
Counsel us, Pastor.
I think there's a couple of conversations in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
One, we need to feel in the Christian church that we can be real with one another.
Yep.
And having said that, when someone's real with us, we need to treat them like a real person and not judge them and not think less of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side of that is we need to be confidential. I mean, there's more confidentiality in the corporate world than there is in the Christian world.
Right.
You know, and we need to hold each other's confidence and be real that way too. Be authentic back toward them in that manner. I think that's what's largely missing in the Christian community, which trickles into the perception in the world around us.
Yeah. Sure. You sort of triggered something. It seems like a real thing in today's world that we see other people not as bearers of the image of God, but as objects that sometimes seem to get in our way. I went and picked up hay for our critters this morning and was talking to the guy that I bought the hay from, and he said there'd been a wreck out in front of his place, and it's out on state highway, so the speed limit is 70 miles an hour, and it was a semi who just plowed into a pickup truck and knocked the pickup truck off into the grass, but then the semi went off into a propane tank business and knocked 8 of the big propane tanks. I'm talking maybe the 2 500-gallon tanks that you see sitting outside people's homes. He knocked 8 of those around, and the thought that went through my head was, it's because he saw the car as an object that was in his way. He didn't see the person in the seat. He didn't know the guy's name. He didn't see him as an image bearer, of Jesus of Nazareth, the image of God, and so he made a miscalculation, right? Somebody was in the middle of his movie and got in the way. How do we? And I find myself doing this. I walk into a Walmart and I'm having races with 80-year-old women, trying to get around them or just trying to get my business done, and you're in the path. Is that? How do we stop this?
I don't know. Slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've gone to other countries and things, and in America, we judge people by what they do and what they attain and how much work they can get done. We value people based on their accomplishments, right? In Africa, for instance, when I go to Uganda, I think it's a real shame type culture. So they value each other on relationships, but if you break their relationships, then they shame you. So it's a real relational type. They adore relationships. They esteem relationships, and until you break the relationship, and then they just shame you. Here in America, your accomplishments will win you recognition, and then when you don't perform, then you're shamed, or then you're cast aside. So there's a huge you're shunned. There's a huge difference there in the way we see one another and relate. And I think that's a Western mindset, cultural mindset that we have. And it's not only, Chris, you're in my way, get out of my way, but we oftentimes come to people and say, Chris, what can you do for me?
Oh, sure.
What can I get out of you?
100%.
I'm gonna work you until I can't get anything else out of you.
Yep.
And we do that in relationships. I'm gonna be in this relationship until I can't get anything else out of it, and then we're done. And we move on, and we see that in spousal relationships. We see that in work relationships. We see that in maybe even in I don't know, kids going to school or sports or anything. What can this entity provide for me? And I'm in it as long as it's good. Yep. And then as soon as there's nothing there, I'm leaving. On to the next thing.
I would even, that sounds exactly like a lot of marriages that I've witnessed.
Right.
Boy, so does that mean that we've sort of lost our way?
I think those are real good indications that we're a culture at drift.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Well, that's well said. So the call of Christ is not cultural. He says, "Come follow me," not right.
Mm-hmm.
And it is going to take men and women who are indifferent to the whims of culture and what people say of them to stand up and do what's right.
Mm-hmm. And my dad and I when he was alive, he passed away several years ago, but he taught me, I don't know, along the way, probably more as an adult than as a child, but I remember conversations, and he would just say, Stephen, you have to control what you can control.
Yeah.
That's where you start.
Yep.
You start in your world. You start with with your family, with your job, with your people, with your sphere of influence. You do what's right in your sphere of influence, and you influence people around you for good. And he would say for good and for God. He would often say you influence for good and for God around you, and that will trickle over into other people's lives. And you can't worry about the culture at large because you've got to worry about what's in front of you. And I don't know. I think that's probably pretty good advice.
I do too.
in terms of just how to live our life, because we can get lost in the weeds by trying to say, "Oh, this is an injustice, and this is an injustice, and this is," and then you end up jaded, and you end up being no good. But every day of our lives, we have an opportunity to focus on what's in front of us, and do the good we know to do today with the people that are in front of us, that are with us, around us, in our work environment, in our school environment, and we can strive to start in our corner of the world, and if God sees fit, He'll grow our sphere of influence.
Sure, right.
But you have to be faithful in the small things.
Yeah.
And
It's a
you have to be
talent
faithful
story.
in the faithful in the things that's in front of you, and cultivate the ground you're walking upon.
It's interesting. I already referenced Scott Jones once in this podcast. I'm going to do it again because you said something earlier that made me think of him. He said the same thing that you did, and you sort of come in through the back door back to this conversation, and it was about being present. And I remember, and he said almost verbatim what you said. One of the things that as a believer we find ourselves needing to do is to be present in those everyday circumstances. And I can remember at the time just sort of nodding my head and letting letting that statement sort of glance off of me. But it didn't. It sort of landed on top of me, and has been really one of the things that I remember most about that conversation, and now about this one. Because I don't think that what you mean by being present is just physically in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big difference.
It's a big difference, yeah, for sure.
To participating in the thing that is in front of you, be it your daughter's recital, or the church service that you're being a part of, or taking care of the widow down the road, or whatever.
100%.
It sounds like that's what your dad is saying, is to be
Right.
to be one of the most spiritual. And Scott and you are all saying the same thing, that to be present in your life, and bringing the Holy Spirit to bear on whatever that situation is that you're facing, is maybe one of the most outlandish things that we can do.
That's right. No, one of the most outlandish, but it's also one of the most beneficial.
Yep, biblical,
Christ-centered, yeah. Christ thought.
exalting.
And to be fair, to be transparent and authentic, it's something we all struggle with, because we all have these things in our pocket called a phone, and it's bidding our attention every second of every day. I was guilty of this week, Chris. It was my 32nd anniversary, and we took the day off. It was midweek. We took the day off. We spent time together, and being the fact that it was the middle of the week, my phone kept ringing. And by the end of the day, we were at dinner, and my wife said, "Honey, I really appreciate you taking the day off and taking time to be with me." But she said, "Can I just clear the air for a minute?"
Oops.
She said, "I was really hoping that you would have just taken one day and left your phone alone." She said, "You were on it a lot." And I can't say that I wasn't jealous. Didn't hurt my feelings.
Oh, wow.
So I had to back up and, eat, and really, it hit me in the head,
Sure.
It hit me in the heart, hit me in the head, and I had to basically process what we're sitting here talking about, because those are real things that happen to every single one of us. Yep. And thankfully, I have a godly wife who's willing to say, "Hey, let's not let this fester."
It sounded like she handled it really, really well.
She did. She did. And, and for good reason. I tend to work a lot. I tend to have a lot of things going, and I tend to move and go. And all she really wanted was for me to stop one day and give it to her.
Yep.
And by all means, she deserved it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, she's put up with you for 32 years, buddy.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Ministry on the Move. I've been your host, Chris McNeil. To learn more about Ministry on the Move, check us out on Facebook now at Ministry on the Move. Or if to find out more about the McNeils, McNeilmusic.com. You can find us on YouTube. Email me at chris@mcneilmusic.com. Thanks so much for listening. Share, like, subscribe. You know the drill. God bless you. We'll see you next time. Why did the coffee file a police report? It got mugged. I'm sorry.